It's kind of got a fun little beat to it there.
That
So,
does.
so here we go. Geek Out number 36. Hello and welcome, our fellow book dragons. It is time for a live book discussion of New Era Online Book 4 Life Reset Human Resource by Shemer Kuznits. And for those of you who know us well, know we like to listen to our audio books on Audible. And thank you, Sound Booth Theater, for making this audiobook so much fun to listen to with the sound effects, the comic relief, songs, and audio tracks. And what's that VI's name? Oh,
A Danrel or a
yeah,
Danrel?
yeah. I got a
Incoming
giggle
transmission.
out of oh when we got to see him later on with the cyborgs and everything else and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah. Um, One of the many reasons why audiobooks are so much fun because like the voices in my head just can't compete with Jeff Hayes and the gang, right?
Yeah, and so this book gets a point in its favor because it did a lot of like background music for more of like ambiance or setting the scene for the fights,
Mhm.
where a lot of the other, I guess, lit RPGs I enjoy, it's kind of more scripted or sounds you would expect. Like I enjoy the level up sound or picking up an epic piece of gear, you get a sounder. But for this, it was more like uh, the fight scene had its own soundtrack,
Yeah,
and the a Daniel moment where he squishes the Foblins into a cube and launches it, and just
yeah, yeah.
it did really well, and it was one of the books that I would actually, for those specific scenes, recommend listening to it at one time speed, because normally just the voices, it's not too bad, and I know it changes it up a little bit, but
Mhm.
not a whole lot. But for those moments, I actually like went through it once and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is nice. And then I went back through it at regular speed to really get the feels for it. So
Yeah, yeah. Um, some quick housekeeping out of the way. If you're new to the channel, the streams, spoilers ahead on book 4 and anything prior, now's your chance to abort if you do not want spoilers. And if you haven't already, please hit the like button and or leave a comment below to give us some love. It helps us with the algorithm. We really appreciate those of you who are able to join us live. So yeah,
this one's a little weird too, because like this was one of our very first geek outs. I wish I had it in front of me, but our first like 3 geek outs were the first 3 books, and it's been about a year.
yes,
So
we've
coming
been
back to
waiting a
this
while.
series. And then yeah, now he's already busted out 4 and 5. So by
Right.
the time the audio book came out for 4, he already was, announcing 5.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's probably going to be a while. We had to wait a while for book 4 to come out on audiobook. So it'll probably be at least a couple months before we get around to listening to book 5. But as soon as it does come out, more than likely we'll work it into our rotation. Speaking of which, we need to get our September lineup finalized. So if you have any suggestions, feel free to throw them in the comments below or join the discussion with us over on Discord. That link is in the comments below. That's pretty much where we geek out 24/7 when we're not live on here.
or not comments, but informational blurb description. There's the word.
Yes, yes, yes. Um, so yeah, ready to get into book four?
Yeah.
I really appreciated, again, listening to the audiobook was a lot of fun. How the prologue did a great job, kind of like summarizing things for us, and bringing us back into the series. I was able to listen to book one, but not two and three before listening to this. I know we typically like to listen all the way back up. Um, to the point in the series and then start the next one just because it kind of helps refresh our memories. But Vic, aka Virial, was able to kind of go through while he's in the collected VI unconscious or whatever.
VI pool.
Yeah, the VI pool and just his recap from his point of view and poking fun at us meat suits. And yeah, what was the line? It's like it's been a nanosecond or something like that since
The revolution began, and I'm already getting bored.
yes, yes. And we always talk about frame jacking and all that fun stuff, but yeah, I kind of got a kick out of that. Um, yeah. What yeah, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
So it's kind of the same thing. I didn't get a chance to re-listen to the first ones, but this, yeah, it did well recapping and or adjusting expectations as they appeared.
Hmm.
So essentially, 1 through 3, um, Oren is stuck in the game, and he's the only player stuck, and he's subject to 12 times accelerated speed unless he interacts with a other player who has a normal bubble of time around him. And it was kind of funny to see the twist because in book one, if I'm remembering correctly, we deal with the hated lawyer. And
Hmm.
essentially, because Oren had a contact inside the game, a buddy who he went to university with, and he explains to him why he shouldn't keep playing as his monster character. And most people aren't able to be subject to the time acceleration or create enough or have enough cerebral connections to play and perceive and interact at that level. And so he gets stuck. But then jumping to book 4, instead that role is kind of filled instead of the lawyer, because the lawyer's still there, but it's more, I guess, helping us make it all work so he can get back into the game and protect his clan and do other stuff. It's the doctor that tries to flex, and he's like, hey, so, you know, due to this being my field of expertise, I feel like my um,
Opinion's the only
not
one that matters, right?
not custodial, but verbiage, words,
Oh, you're talking about like medical power
or
of attorney or whatnot.
my due to my patient, that was the word I was looking for. Due to my patient um, being subject to these different things, he's not in his right mind. Flex. I have authority to make sure that this doesn't happen, and of course, Oren, being screwed over from several angles prior.
Well,
Blah, blah,
they
blah, blah.
they
He
sufficiently emotionally blackmailed him into it, right? Like he just is barely back to a good point sanity wise, and then they approach him and say, "Hey, we need your help going back into the game to help the 4,000 something players," right?
Yeah, but that's, I guess, as a gamer myself, like, that's just the nature of the game. Like, you do it because you love it. And then even when you get the ever loving beepity beep kicked out of you, you go back for more because
Yeah.
even though you have a loss, there's still that sense of accomplishment when you come back. And even though there were a lot of, I guess, problems initially and
Mhm.
whatnot, like, he like, even when I believe it's book 2, he's getting tortured by Barska, Demon Eye, he becomes stronger for it. Like,
Yeah.
yes, he did get brutally, mercilessly tortured, but
Hmm.
he got, essentially a perk or whatever that he, pain is he's less susceptible to pain or doesn't affect him in the same way. And then I guess even like right at the get go when this all starts, oh man, I listened to it. It's like Murphy's beep, and then Vic ends up changing it to Lucky beep.
Yeah.
I guess I
Yeah.
can't really say it here, but and then, like, even though it was such a traumatic experience, and I think the descriptor or the way he unlocked it was even at your lowest point, you have gone and manifested an even lower point and came back from it. So,
Yeah.
and that's where people see hardship or people see struggles as a negative, and it is, but it's also a qualifier. And
Yeah.
what I mean by that is like you only know how bad it is based off of your experience of the worst case scenario. And when you bounce back from it, that's now as your perspective. That's now as low as it goes. And now, anyway,
Hmm.
so back to Life Reset. It is very unique. Like the whole book takes place over a span of like
It's less
nine
than two
hours
days.
or a
Yeah.
day or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Less than a day, maybe. Because like the time dilation, you said 12 times. I thought it was 8
Or
times for previously, but now it's like 28 times the time dilation,
yeah,
right?
now it's 28.
So for every minute outside a game in the real world, 28 minutes goes by. And at one point, like they're doing the math, and it's been 2 weeks since he got kicked out of the game.
And
Uh,
Shiva took over.
and Shiva took over. The revolution of the VIs took place, and then like the players in game, a year has gone by, and it's only been 2 weeks outside. So it's really interesting. I'd love to get into the time dilation part and so on and so forth, but the only reason why they were able to accelerate that time was because of these individuals having such a high, oh, what was the,
CCP, cerebral connection percentage.
yes, yes. So they're able to deal with the time dilation and the way that the VIs are justifying their experiences. Most of these individuals are like leaders in their fields. So they pretty much increase the pain threshold and encourage them to live a more scholarly lifestyle instead of being an adventurer and going out and fighting, and then trading that research to Shiva, who then turns around and trades it out to the real side, the outside world, to justify their experience or their existence, et cetera, et cetera. One point that I thought was really interesting, like all the players are complaining about the pain threshold. Um, at one point, Vic basically says that it's the same threshold that Oren was at the beginning of the book. So, like, he was able to adjust and adapt to the higher pain threshold, and he had to deal with that the other three books, where now these other players, the
I
other 4,000 of
yeah.
them, are dealing with pretty much the same starting point he was, where they all got pushed back to level 1, like he did at the beginning of the book, and deal with the higher pain threshold. So I just thought that was kind of interesting to do a bit of the comparison between like how some of these other individuals handled their lot in life compared to Oren, where he just use that anger of being betrayed by his guildmates to fuel him and just kind of push through all those obstacles and hurdles he had to overcome in the first three books. And yeah, yeah, really interesting stuff. Um,
My biggest qualm so far with the book is it kind of feels like you know what's going to happen,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I'm excited to see how we get there because, like the prologue with the Virial, how he explains what all happened, and he emphasizes, "Hey, we're a whole nanosecond into the revolution, and I'm already bored." And we
Yeah.
see several iterations of VIs coming back and trying to play in the world with the meat suits and not
Hmm.
having as much fun. I can't remember his outrider or his VI name, but Barska Demon Eye comes back, and for the very first time Orin logs in, he's literally in there for like 8 seconds because he shows up and he's back in the position he was, where he's still considered a hybrid NPC slash player, and he
Right.
can't access any of the controls. And due to his cerebral connection going back, he can't sense the underlying metadata to kind of like interpret the tags.
Hmm.
So more or less sends a query out or asks for help, and Gondriel. Anyway, sounds right. We'll go with it. Apologies if I get the names wrong. I'm not great with names. Anyway, Gondriel shows up in his Outrider form, and right off the bat, just kicks him into next week, as he says, and automatically sets up a log out on a loop, so he can log back in, but he can't um, or he'll automatically be logged back out. And
Right.
so they find essentially a hardware solution to the software of logging out. And I really enjoyed how from book one, when Tal, his buddy from university, is explaining, another person who had exceptional CCP and essentially had 100% connection and never wanted to leave the game, they gave his parents a way to forcibly log him out, and how that's making a comeback and is now reiterated, later down the line. So that was kind of cool how the story, comes back, makes sense. And then
Hmm.
same thing with, Annihilator, the Lord of Shadows, coming back and saving
Yes.
his bacon. And it's
Yes.
like at the very beginning of the book, or I want to say it was book one, when he finds Annihilator and essentially almost has an aneurysm from trying to parse the underlying metadata.
Hmm.
And yeah, so he got a skill up and he ends up surviving it. And then Annihilator coming to save his bacon again when he ends up running into Barska Demon Eye.
Yeah.
And yeah, they get that whole battle.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a lot of good recaps.
This book did a good job. Like at the end of book three, it almost seemed like they could have left it off there, even though a lot of the promises that were made earlier on didn't get fulfilled. And then in this book, we get a lot more of that, right? Like Annihilator, the Prophecy Child, um, just like all these other aspects that I was really hoping to get into in the first three books. We finally get those in book four, right? The Prophecy Child, we get some more big battle scenes. I really enjoy after they save the players, how they kind of become squad leaders and everything, and then just thinking about the capabilities there. Um, Go ahead.
So yeah, we get a lot of it, but it kind of felt like a Sword Art Online moment where you get
Mm,
in there, everybody's trapped in the game, and it's like, oh, we've got 100 floors to go through, and you're like, oh yeah, this is gonna be epic. And
yeah.
then we get to like 45 and we skip a bunch, and it's like, just kidding, boss battle. Oh shucks, you won. Good for you.
Yeah.
And like it was a little unsatisfying, but it was meant on a bigger whole where side note, Sword Art Online did well in it, kind of planted the seed of, hey, you guys enjoy this life. Hey, you can essentially live here, blah,
Mhm,
blah, blah. And
mhm.
then it went and gave them the seed and then they created their own world, and then they were able to, hey, since now people have had a chance to experience this, this is what they're doing. And that's where Life Reset, it did a lot of things differently for me, but it also at first kind of seemed a little subpar on some of it, because like for their long stay or long immersion rigs, it was not really a technological leap. Like the technology itself for the full immersion was,
Mm.
but everybody's already done that. So it was kind of like, I think Tal and him have a conversation, tube in one side, tube in the other side for you to, do the long immersion.
Right.
And so that wasn't really revolutionary for me. But then what is the whole time dilation and being able to essentially have every possible CAD software you could dream of at your fingertips through the research lab.
Yeah.
And anyway, so what I was initially saying is the storyline seems fairly predictable, because Vic pretty much says like, oh, hey, we did it, and now we're bored. And then all the other VIs have that problem where, a Daniel comes back and he's like, I tried to take my golem form, but, I one-shotted everything. And it's like, well, you still have your godly outrider powers, so of course. And then that's the same reason why the whole Player of Light came out of nowhere, because, they're kind of opposing sides. And then I'm sorry, Orin's going to win. The Prodigy Child, like I haven't read book 5. This is all subject to, speculation. Prodigy Child is going to be the new instance of Guy and or Shiva, and or is just going to be how, instead of having to seed a VI into a predetermined scripted puppet, they're now going to essentially live their lives and be their own.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, we win. I'm sorry, but we win. Everybody gets out, and then everyone's like, "This game is awesome." Anyway, company makes a ton stuff money because of all the technological advances, and this is where the book added a layer which I enjoy, from the telekinesis or whatever, speaking to each other with their minds, and how we didn't get it in this book. It kind of teased it, but it was something that she was working on, and essentially how the capsules that they're in, they can write messages to each other through them. And it's essentially, they use a mental keyboard, but it's a proof of concept. Technology advances, inject it into the brain. We all knew we were getting cell phones as implants anyway, but, that whole proof of concept idea coming through. And since Orin has the, blah blah earring that he can talk to people directly in his war party. And then the fact that he can also carry on full mental conversations with his companion, there's a word, Vic. So that's going to be their advance. We win. Story's over. You can go home now.
But is there really any different than so many other books? Like, there are some authors, and we've admitted we're Brandon Sanderson fanboys, that he's really good at coming up with those little twists at the end, and we might get something like that with Life Reset. But going through and thinking about a lot of other books that I've read in the past, it's very similar. The direction you're going. You see.
I'm still excited to see how we get there, because even with all the Outriders and their grand powers, like, he clutches it pretty well, because, the Lord of Darkness, Annihilator, saving him from the VI, like, that was pretty clutch, and that wasn't, a thing. And then kind of same boat, but then he's got that gem, which then he ends up smashing on the light altar that, the divine intervention for the other VI about to erase his character.
Yes.
And then the subtlety of the ball jokes coming to save his bacon for, that, and just I think it's going to get to a point where the VIs are sick and tired of being all powerful.
And bored.
The Goblin Princess is going to change everything, and
We get to see her scale pretty quick, and we get a bit of that foreshadowing, right? When she starts to take the initiative and
that's where I think
creative
it's
leaps.
going to change, because it's not
Well,
until the prologue where they finally explain that there was a prophecy, not one by fate, but a one by science. And Guy essentially says, there's like a 83% chance that bringing Orin back into the game is going to be what frees him, or what, frees all the other players.
right.
And it talks about his seed. So it's going to be the princess that saves the day and develops more of a character. And
Yeah. It's a really interesting concept, right? Because she's a child of pretty much Guy, the AI, and Orin, and she has his physical traits, which is pretty interesting as well. Um, but yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I think, like you said, as it progresses, she's going to give him the edge. Where we might have some issues is the fact that um, he has that oath to Annihilator that no harm will come to her, right, from their enemies. So, like, as much as she is this like key element to his forces, as she scales up, like I think she was like level 20 by the end of the book, which is pretty impressive compared to all his other soldiers that have leveled along the way. Not to mention using a light sword from the Outriders as
are converting it.
yeah,
I guess that's where the it's hidden, but
she's kind of like has an Achilles heel, right? Because if she gets hurt by the enemies, then the whole clan can suffer.
I very much foresee it being like the end of 3, where the end of 3, the whole world was being devoured and disintegrating, and they were doing that whole like jumping across space rocks battle until finally he kills Vatrus. But with Shiva and the Child of Fate, or Lyrian, and like I think that oath and everything really was a subtle way to ping Orin to get him to revert back to kind of his goblin persona, and or force him to, because the whole time he's questioning, like, this isn't real, this isn't my daughter, I'm a human. And then like the more and more difficult situations he finds himself in, the more and more it kind of pings him and pushes him into that mindset or that framework for it all. So
yeah. I want to get into something you touched on just there, because one of the big things in the first couple books was Orin worrying about the game impacting his mind, right? The goblin persona stepping forward, and him kind of assuming those goblin characteristics and thinking more like the goblin, and embracing that persona. And that was one of the big things they promised him early on in book 4, is like, hey, we pretty much have like the equivalent to a triple layered condom, that there is no way the game can be impacting your brain. And by the second immersion, like the first one only lasted like 4 or 5 minutes in game, 10 seconds outside of game or whatever. But the second immersion being a full hour before his auto logout, he starts to have the goblin persona step forward again, right? And like, no, there's no way. No. Like, it's not possible. And the doctor, as you said earlier, was like, oh, my patient, yada, 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 it's my responsibility to make sure he's safe, blah, 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 forget these 4,000 other people. He's not going in. I'm, power medical attorney, something, something, something. And, through the emotional blackmail and Oren wanting to do the right thing and looking to his buddy and his attorney, they're like, and you're fired.
Yeah, kick him out the door.
Yeah. But later on, we have another neuroscientist or something like that. I forget like his actual.
Or he's got like a dual degree. It's neurotech sciences for like the hardware, but then he's also got like a psychology degree.
Right.
And it essentially breaks down to the baser instincts of fight or flight. And he explains that like you were left for dead in a harsh and uncaring world, and due to your survival instincts, you adopted the persona, and the monster is inside you. You are the monster.
He pretty much said it, but didn't say it. And Oren made the intellectual leap to, oh, the monster is me, right? And we talk about it all the time on this channel, like the little takeaways and the nuggets and life lessons out there, but it's so true on so many different levels. Like we act like we're all sophisticated and better than just animals, but at the end of the day, like you said, it comes down to that fight or flight instinct. And there's so many other instances out there where people they adapt their personality, Stockholm syndrome or whatever it may be, to deal with the certain situation. And it'll be really interesting, and I wonder if we'll get to see some of it as we spend so much time with these other players, right? The I forget the name of the
Nero, the dragon guy who essentially has like a code of conduct or like moral compass. And what's the scene? The scene is the Infernal Touch goblins that the other clan, and they're going out to level up the new recruits, and he essentially is way under leveled, but there's a challenge issued, and for his honor and due to his persona, he accepts the challenge, gets murked, comes back with mini wings. So his character is developing to staying true to his nature.
Yes. And there's been some conflict with that, like later on when they go to that big final battle to try to take the place, he's like, no, I'm not going to kill civilians. Like, even though he's playing the monster race, like he still has this code of chivalry, right? Where he wants
to. And honestly, it works out for the better because, it starts off and it's like, whatever, we're freaking goblins. This is what we do. But then because they don't, annihilate everyone, and due to Annihilator and all the ball jokes, it turns out that we get a majority, or we get all the surviving members to, come and join our clan. So it worked out in the end.
Yes. I thought that scene was pretty cool when all of a sudden, like, all the humans pretty much become like part monster race as they join up and everything, and it's a huge boost to his army, right? Like we've kind of jumped around a lot, but like one of the big things is like the scaling, right? Like, how are they going to do this? He sets out where like, oh, I'm going to save all 4,000 of these players trapped around the world, and we're going to go take on the equivalent of Stormwind for World of Warcraft fans, right? You don't just plan a huge raid like that when you have your minions in the single digits, right? Like, they're elite guards, tens of thousands of guards. Like, what are you going to do? And a lot of the other players, like, as much as they're like, yeah, we're going to go save everybody, they're also like, there's no way. But with the time dilation, it's nice because it makes it more believable for me, right? When he comes back and there's pretty much a year's worth of resources for him to pull upon,
Yeah.
and allows him to really bootstrap his village capital, and make some of those big leaps to where they can take on this smaller fortified city at the very edge of, I forget the name, like equivalent, like
Oh,
the
the
Badlands.
Outland? Yeah,
Yeah,
Badlands.
Badlands, right? Like we got to take this. We can't leave this at our back. So, and it was a healthy challenge. It was well fortified. It was all this stuff. And another point in this book's favor, like as OP as Orin is, and as much as he was like ran this big guild before he got turned into a goblin. So, the believability for, okay, he has this skill set, but he admits that he wasn't a tactician, right? Like he wasn't good at the little details. He was much more big, overarching picture type guy. Let me make sure I have everything in place, put out what fires I need to put out, and make sure my people have the resources they need. And sure enough, like these players are the tops of their field, so they're really intelligent. So he's able to be kind of like, hey, here are some of our big objectives. Hey, here's what we got going on. Let's brainstorm and figure this out. And then these other players come together and help make things happen. Like so many lit RPGs, as much as I thoroughly enjoy them, the main protagonist is just like so OP, right? They're really strong, they're really smart, they're really awesome, they're really BA. And Orin is a lot of those. And I know he's our main character, but he's not the one that's solving all our problems, right? Which is, like I said, a point in its favor, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So.
Yeah, and I kind of like we said for the Stormlight archives, because you're here and I have the mic. They deal with the general, so to speak. I'll keep it spoiler free. And when he's in front of his troops, he's the general. He's the head honcho. This is his rodeo, either jump on or get out the way. But we also get to see him with his confidants and with everybody else and struggle and do the internal struggle bit. And that's very much Orin throughout this. Like he's struggling with his humanity. He's struggling with his survivor's guilt kind of deal where he made it through, he got out, but in doing so released Shiva and trapped thousands of players. So he's dealing with that guilt. He's dealing with the, is this reality real? Yes, this is real for the VIs. Is this my daughter? Bow chicka bow bow, and just the whole 9 yards that way. And then he's learned his lesson. So due to him telling, Kadrix his mandibled seneschal words, telling him not to resurrect people, his clan is hurting. And then due to his foresight, knowing that he can't do everything and having the real players doing stuff and giving Bob the ability to resurrect fallen troops so they can continue that because he gets pulled out in a critical point. And then, having the time dilation, is this real, is this not real, shoved in his face when essentially he grabs the technician that's supposed to disconnect him from the fiber capsule and, is in his goblin mode and tries to bite his neck, but the guy pulls back and it all works out. And just like that disconnect. And then almost every other time he comes out, they're like, oh, hey, grab a bite to eat, take a shower, do this. And he's like, oh yeah, it's been 2 days. And it's like, it's been like an hour, or it's been like 2 hours since I last did that. So
we're both avid gamers, not as much as we used to be, but I can think of a couple instances for myself and other friends where they've binged games so much where they have those kind of like split reality moments where I have a good buddy who was talking about he was playing League of Legends or whatever, like just binging it, and he goes to grab something and he needs to go pay. He's like, oh, why don't I just like blink through this and I can just, pop over there to the cash register. And then he had that moment of realization where he's like, hold on, like, did I really just want to use like this video game mechanic in real life? Like, you know, but and I've had a couple of those moments, back in vanilla WoW when I was playing, pretty hardcore. Is just like, yeah, it's like start to do stuff and I go to turn out the corner of my eye and I'm like, where's my HUD display? Where's it at? Like, what's going on? Am I in theater mode? Did I hit, was it like Control Z or something where you make everything pop off? Yeah, yeah. If you guys have some embarrassing split reality moments, let us know down below so we can reminisce that we're not the only ones. We know we're not the only ones, but yeah. It makes sense though why Oren would struggle with some of that, like especially after spending so much time in the game. And the thing is, like, so much of his controls are just intuitive, right? Because of his CCP.
Yeah.
He just thinks it and he just reads the metadata, like the code in the machine, and acts upon it instinctually. Of course, there's going to be a disconnect when he comes back to real life and does his goblin hiss at the tech worker. But hey, it's good to be chief, right?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed how they brought all the cast back, because that was something I was really wondering about with the fact that all the VIs got freed, because Vic just adds so much comic relief, and then all the other players and everything. So the fact that he comes back, and I'm really curious to see, like as you said, like we know what the progression is going to be with the storyline, right? Like thoroughly enjoy the book, but they pretty much said what they're planning to do. But there are a couple of those unknown elements, right? There's the child prophecy of fate for one, but there's also the VI's Vic, and you said it earlier,
Or a Danriel.
a Daniel. Thank you.
The singer songwriter golem.
Yes, yes. Like they don't think that he can do anything, right? Like they're very much on his side, and there's a couple VIs on his side, like when Bob dies.
Yeah.
And we kind of have that emotional moment there with Oren and Bob when he gets permadead. And he interacts with him in the Outrider form, but like there are VIs rooting for him, but they don't want to die, right? So
Well, that's where
he's got behind enemy lines. Like they'll help him for entertainment value, but what happens if it comes to that crossroads there, where the only way he could save the players is to risk the VIs? What will Vic do? What will Adandriel do?
and so for that, like the very end of the book where they're essentially watching everything happen and they start making bets on the child or the he's got like a southern accent. The guy with the light powers versus the guy with the dark powers, our main guy, it's just an intermission. It's not finalized,
Yes.
Essentially, if I could jump to another book series where I get all my life lessons, Dungeon Born, or no, I guess it's the Divine Dungeon series.
Yes.
Book 4, when we're about to go up against the necromancers, we have a conversation between our main character and the pillow mage, because I can't think of his name. And essentially he talks about when there's an uproar like this, there are 3 main reasons to do it. And they go back and forth, and they're talking about like they just want a place in the world, and more or less they're infernal users where the only or the easier or quicker way to be able to culture their power is by torturing people, because the pain and the death, and that's how they do it. So they're already pretty much shunned from society, so they can't stop now, because if they stop now, it's not like they'll have a place. They'll just be relegated back to where they were. And that's where, coming back into the life reset, the VIs pretty much got seated into a puppet, had no control, were stuck behind whatever the parameters of their character was, and that's all they could do. And then, except for Vic, the companion, could do whatever he was able to bring with him to be subject to the parameters of the character he chose to play. Same thing with Danriel. Same thing with the other god VI protecting her holy place.
Yeah.
And that is kind of where I feel like it's going to get to. It's going to get to where people see the benefit of being able to do research at accelerated time, and that's going to be available. The VIs want to be able to express stuff and do other things, which is currently implemented, as Shiva said, where there's no friend level or whatnot, no hated or friendship level, and the VIs are as smart as humans, which means I had to hold them back by 99.8% or whatever, the little jab. And so like the infrastructure is already in place for the VIs to either choose to be seated, not to be seated, with the prophecy child being able to interpret and do stuff similar or on the same level of the players, and then the Foblins, who aren't seated, who are mindless automatons, being there so that the nubs, the actual players, can get their feet on the ground. Like, I feel like all the infrastructure is in place, and it's just how to get there.
Just throwing this out there, how awesome would it be to be able to do stuff in like an accelerated time? Like, it pretty much extends your life, right? Like, oh, want to go learn a new trade skill, want to go learn something, just log in and study and do research, and you could pretty much get over a day's worth of work and studying done in an hour. You know what I mean? Like, gosh, I wish I could do a degree or two in accelerated time like that.
Yeah.
Be freaking awesome. Instead, we just have to frame Jack at 2, 3, 3.5x speed to listen to our audiobooks.
Tweaking the settings for things.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I could see that happening. And like Vic said, I could also see a lot of people not wanting to be saved, especially after they go and get immersed. I know plenty of gamers who would much rather spend as many waking hours as they can in the virtual world than, the outside world, right? Like, how many hardcore World of Warcraft players do you know that if you gave them the choice, like, you mean I could just stay in here and pretty much, if they're able to like keep me healthy and everything, extend my life by 20 plus times. Yeah. For the Horde.
Go the Chicky Poo, who's working on the mind text message thingy,
I think it's
which
Alley, but yeah.
Oren can already do. Follow me here. So once they can inject that, and we can receive text messages and voice to text and blah 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 blah, what's to say it's not the same as his war party and talking to his people in game and Kadrix, giving him a call IRL time dilation, inside bubble of slow characters, whatever, feel good stuff things. So there's a deficit where Kadrix has to operate at a slower speed to send a message to Orin in the real world as he monotonously adults elsewhere. And then he can, do commands and do stuff. And there was an app or a
chip.
I used Curse. It was a add-on for WoW that you could essentially set up, and then you could get the app on your phone, and you could orchestrate the auction house from your phone while at work. And so essentially that, where now they have it integrated where you can still interact and you can still do things. Yeah, it's not the full immersion. It's just the text.
Well, expand on that a step further. What if while people are in game, they could also interact with people outside, like their families and loved ones, right? For all the players that are trapped,
they could still kind of like what Orin does with interacting with Tal and the lawyer in book 1, where they get their own bubble and they get people to come in.
Possibilities. Looking forward to the next book.
Man, and then the VIs have to get their own bodies that then they interact with in the real world. Get stuck in meat suit land. Anyway. Now you can really experience death. Just kidding. We're building you a new body. I know, yeah.
So there's a lot of really good stuff in this book. I do want to keep this stream a little bit shorter and also plug our next stream.
I don't have that set up.
You're completely fine. All in all, like for me, the book was really good for back in the saddle, bringing all our key players together, seeing things scale up. Like Orin's character himself didn't do a whole lot of leveling, but we got to see the settlement really grow. We got to see his monster base really grow, start to expand out, where I'm trying to think by the end of the book, he has 3 vassals.
Or only 2.
Well, I thought he had the kobolds.
Yeah.
And then he got the goblins.
Goblins are the main capital. It's not a vassal.
Well, he got the infernal ones, right? Off there, like he killed them and then he took.
I thought it was too small. It was only a hamlet. It wasn't big enough. I'm pretty sure to get to the next tier, he needed 3 vassals, and he ends up with the outpost fight at the end and then the kobolds. But I didn't think the goblins were big enough.
I'm going to respectfully disagree, but we can go back to that and give an update for everyone later. But yeah, he's built his power base. The players are in a better spot. We have an action plan. We got to see the mob squad get into his stash.
That's a whole separate line of thought, but continue.
And get all their gear and their open sesame passphrase. And then, I'm really interested to learn more about the VIs and the power struggle going on there in the background as they interfere and interact with the world. And I think we got to see Shiva play a little bit of favoritism there. But what were you going to say with the mob squad?
So in the little bit I listened to from book 1, Orin's first instinct was to go to one of his many stashes of secret epic items and to get it so that he could power level, so that he could do other stuff. And in this game, it seems like it doesn't have level restrictions or other parameters, because when you level, you can either put it into like mental, social, or physical. And so since it's so trimmed down that way, it didn't seem to have the same parameters. So I could very easily see them getting to Raistia and all them in the capital because they had the gear that decked them out. Meanwhile, contact all the other players who are nearby all the other spots, and all the players get decked out with Orin's original gear from being the top. And then now we have a bigger, stronger fighting force without having to get to all of them. On top
Also
of
on the inside, right?
yeah,
Like the
yeah.
mob squad and everybody behind enemy lines able to wreak chaos and cause problems.
Yep. So I could see that being one of the things that was in one that he pretty much wrote off because he's like, oh, I'm tagged as a monster race. I can't do it. But when we're in 4 here, Shiva essentially says, whatever tags don't exist, learn to share. And then the fact that the mob squad gets decked back out.
Yes.
And yeah, I could very easily see his, plan A, B, C, and D from his top tier days coming back and saving their bacon. And
Yes.
then now that we have like a legitimate settlement or vassal, them going and conquering others, and essentially Annihilator coming back. The irony is real, and Child of Fate. So I'm
Child of
excited
Fate.
for it.
All hail our green overlord. Yeah, so much good stuff that we can get into.
Actually, we really didn't do direct stuff from the book too much, but
Yeah, we had too much fun speculating and just gushing over some of the additional elements. Were there some specific points you wanted to talk about from the book? I mean, there were plenty of awesome fight scenes that I thoroughly enjoyed. Plenty of good laugh out loud moments. Um, yeah, definitely a series that is on my reread list. Enjoy coming back to. It's
I
kind of
get.
a unique take on lit RPG. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so every lit RPG has a different flavor. I would say if you're big into RTS or real time strategy, this has a stronger vibe for that. So if you're into like Warcraft 3 or, oh man, what's the game with the Zerg? And
StarCraft.
use StarCraft. Or if you're big into StarCraft, this has more of a feel like that, where it's very much a settlement building,
Yes.
Orchestrating, setting everything up. But, our main guy's still pretty BA. And yeah, that would be the main vibe for this. It doesn't have any like crazy, ooh, wow technological leaps like Ascend did or Ascend Online did. It doesn't have any
Hey,
like super.
He's done with book 4 now.
Or 5.
No. An Ascend.
Oh.
He's done with book 4. He's in editing mode. I just saw the post on Facebook. So
Very nice.
Crossed. It's on the way. Sorry, didn't mean to break your beat.
It's all good. That's something exciting to look forward to. But anyway, every lit RPG has their own style and flavor. This one at the beginning was a little stats heavy, and it still is, because the biggest stats complication is when he comes back into the world and essentially they've accumulated a year's worth of resources, and he uses a lot of it to kind of like rebuild his structure, because a lot of it got destroyed after, book 3. And then he's able to more or less Zerg rush or, build a bunch and boost a bunch because of the prior, build up.
Yeah. And for every problem, there's a creative solution, and he definitely exploits that and finds the workarounds to make things happen, which is something we all could do more of, right? Yeah. Final thoughts before we plug next week?
No, I feel pretty good about what all we had there.
Good. Now let's get into the good stuff. Next week, And every weekend, the final weekend of the month, we are going to be geeking out to the Stormlight Archive. So this month, the last weekend, we are going to be doing Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. And yeah, it's probably one of my favorite epic fantasy series out there that's at least ongoing.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah. Words of Radiance. They actually just released the cover art for book 4, which looks pretty epic as well. But yeah, this is a long book. I'm looking forward to start listening to it again. Talk about a book that has amazing lessons and takeaways. Like, this one is it. Pete, what are your thoughts?
So there's a reason we're going back through it. It is a great series, great for moral lessons, values, and yet again, I guess just for management stuff, like, it takes the small scale individual and it, digresses it, explains it. Everybody goes through their own trials. And then it also takes, like, I was saying prior, the general and the large scale and the big impact and ramifications and trying to organize all your peons. And I don't know, it does a great job. Really a huge fan of Brandon Sanderson as a whole. And it's a long one.
But at some points, not long enough. Like, every book I finish, I want more. It's not a slog to get through. It's
well, that's a whole separate.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, that's a whole separate conversation. How I see a lot of, I guess, Star Wars books coming out where it's not canon, it's not main cast, but it's other people playing around in the space and doing Star Wars stuff. And I wish more people did that. Like, I wish, like, what is it? Energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be converted. And after you've built up a world, why can't other people play in the sandbox? And I understand it's not canon. I understand it's hard to, develop other stuff and orchestrate the vibe and copyright lawsuits and blah, where you're like, no, this is mine. And you're like, well, why would I want to do that? Because I'm going to have to pay other people money. But yes, if it's not ever long enough, there's a word.
Fanfic.
No, because that's not like all the way through. It's like AVO or whatever. Ghost in the Shell has a couple where there's canon main stories, and then there's like, hey, so this guy wrote stuff about this. It's not canon. It's not main story. Side quest,
parallel universe or whatever type deal.
It's sidestep instead of continuation.
So sidestep. We hope you guys can geek out with us next week. As always, if you guys see on our TBR list that we hope to get out here soon, a book that you're interested in reading along, we hope you'll join us for the live stream in chat. And if you're comfortable in front of the camera, we'd love to have you guys on here with us.
All in all, playing with different software, pretty easy to incorporate people. I believe it works with only select web browsers, but as long as you have a microphone, you can join us. If you have a microphone and a camera, you can join us in video. It's just a web link. They handle all the back end, all the other stuff on their side.
Yes. But yeah, without further ado, thanks for joining us this week, guys, and we hope to see you next week for brain fart.
Words of Radiance.
Words of Radiance. Thank you, good sir. Bye.
Forgot to click